The first time she lit the candle, everyone clapped. It was the kind you stick in the middle of a fancy cake when someone wants to make a statement. Sparkling. Spiraling. Too big for a sheet cake, honestly. She leaned forward, flame trembling near her face, her smile glowing almost theatrically, and for a second, just a second, I let myself believe the night was still about me. But the second time? That one wasn't for me. She relit it after most people had left. The music had faded into background hum, napkins crumpled, plastic cups half full of warm soda, balloons sagging like the room had lost interest. I stood near the coat rack, pretending to scroll my phone. She thought I'd already stepped out to grab the car. Instead, I watched her do it again, bend toward that ridiculous candle, laugh at something he said, and light it. He. Not me. He even pretended to sing. They both did. Quietly. Some inside joke I wasn't invited into. I don't know what snapped inside me right then, but it wasn't anger. Not at first. It was a silence. A hollowing. Like standing in your childhood home and realizing all the furniture is gone, but the lights are still on. He touched her wrist as she blew it out again. And she didn't flinch. People don't talk about the micro-betrayals. The small, stupid gestures that mean everything only to the one left out. I stood there, behind a folding table covered in icing smears, and watched my wife rehearse a moment with someone else that she had just performed for me. I didn't say a word. I didn't need to. I just walked out. Past the sagging decorations, down the rented event hall steps, through the parking lot still wet from earlier rain. I got in my car, looked at the passenger seat, and laughed, really laughed, because the only thing sitting there was her gift to me. A novelty mug, wrapped in tissue paper, with a tag that read, "To my Marvin, still sweet at 41. She flirted with a guest at the surprise party she threw for my birthday. And I left. I didn't drive home. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even think. I just kept driving until the roads got empty and the GPS lost signal. And what happened next, the motel, the text messages I shouldn't have seen, the voicemail from her sister, and the photo that finally made me vomit in a gas station restroom, that's where everything really began. I didn't plan to stop. I didn't even realize how far I'd driven until my fuel light came on and the road turned into nothing but fog and farmhouses. There was this old gas station somewhere along Route 13, the kind with flickering signage and a restroom key chained to a brick. I pulled in just past 1 a.m., and I remember thinking it looked like a place where people disappeared on purpose. Maybe that's what drew me in. The restroom reeked of bleach and loneliness. The mirror was cracked, and the paper towel dispenser was empty. I looked at myself, really looked, and I don't know what hit me harder, the fact that I still had birthday confetti in my hair, or the fact that I didn't feel anything about it anymore. Not anger, not sadness, just numb. Like my body knew before my brain did that something irreversible had happened. I sat in my car for another 10 minutes before checking my phone. For missed calls from Eleanor. One text from her sister, "Amy, call me when you can. It's about Eleanor. You deserve to know." I stared at those words until they blurred. You deserve to know. Know what? I already knew. I'd seen it. The candle, the wrist touch, the practiced intimacy. Whatever this was, it had started long before tonight. Tonight was just the first time I was the accidental witness. But then my phone buzzed again. Another message from Amy. Just one photo. Blurry, taken from behind a pillar or doorway. It was Eleanor and that man, Devin, locked in a slow dance. His hand on her lower back. Her head leaning against his neck. My stomach dropped like an elevator with the cable cut. This wasn't from tonight. This was weeks ago. I could tell by her hair. She had bangs in this one. She'd grown them out last month. The timestamp was from late March. March. I remember March. That's when she told me she had a conference in Bloomington. The same weekend I had that sinus infection and slept on the couch so I wouldn't keep her up. She said the hotel was boring. That the sessions were dry. That she missed me. She had slow danced with another man while I was wrapped in blankets, watching reruns and eating instant noodles alone. And if you think that was the worst part, it wasn't. Because while I sat there, in the dark, lit only by the blue glow of my phone, the gas station speakers began playing a familiar tune. Not a popular one. Not something you'd hear unless it was on a curated playlist or a wedding DJ's ancient library. It was our first dance song. Some cursed, bittersweet indie ballad we picked because it was ours. Because no one else would use it. Because it made us feel like we were the center of something soft and rare. Now it was background music for a bathroom break at a forgotten gas station while I tried not to sob into the steering wheel. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't call her or reply to Amy. I just sat there, watching rain smear the windshield like even the sky didn't want to look at me. And I made a decision. I wasn't going back. Not tonight. Not ever. The house, the couch, the framed wedding photo in the hallway, they could all belong to someone else now. But the next morning, something happened. Something that changed the story from betrayal to something even stranger. Because the phone I had left charging on the passenger seat started ringing. Not with Eleanor. Not with Amy. It was Devin. And I answered. I don't know why I answered. Maybe because I wanted to hear the voice of the man who had quietly replaced me. Maybe because deep down, I hoped he would say something so despicable that it would give me permission to finally hate her out loud. But when I swiped my finger across the screen and brought the phone to my ear, what I heard wasn't smugness. It wasn't mockery. It was quiet, careful, and disturbingly calm. Marvin, he said, as if we were colleagues, or friends who hadn't caught up in a while. Please don't hang up. I didn't say anything. I just waited. Because what do you say to the man your wife danced with behind your back? The man she touched like you no longer existed? He took my silence as permission. I didn't know it was your birthday, he said. I swear, I wouldn't have gone if I had known. It hit me like a slap, not the words, but the fact that she never mentioned it was my birthday. She invited him to my party and didn't even tell him what it was for. You're calling me to apologize? I finally muttered, surprised by how hoarse my voice had become. No, he replied. I'm calling you because I think you need to know something. About Eleanor. I sat back in the car, letting the words hang there. My windshield was fogged over. Outside, the sky was turning that early morning gray that makes everything feel distant. I closed my eyes and waited. She told me you two were separated, he said. That you'd moved into the guest room. That it was mutual. I didn't want to get involved with someone married, man. I don't do that. I wanted to laugh. Not because it was funny, but because of how rehearsed it all sounded. Like she had been laying out this little fiction piece by piece, building her excuses, cushioning her betrayal and soft lies, so it wouldn't feel as dirty to the people she pulled into it. She was lying, I said. We weren't separated. She kissed me goodnight the night before the party. There was silence on the other end. I could hear his breathing, like he was trying to figure out what to do with that information. I'm sorry, Marvin, he finally said, and to his credit, it sounded genuine. She didn't just lie to you. But here's the thing. I didn't want his apology. I didn't want anything from him. I wanted him to stop saying my name like it was his to use. And yet, some broken part of me needed the truth, even if it came from him. How long? I asked. He paused. Since January. Maybe a little before. It started with drinks after work. I thought it was innocent. I thought she was just lonely. My hands were shaking. January. That was around the time she started staying late. The time she told me she wanted space to breathe. I thought she meant yoga, meditation. I even bought her a scented candle set. She hated it. She told me she never wanted to hurt you, he added. And that was when something dark, something colder than sadness crept into my chest. Because hurting someone is easy, but pretending like you didn't mean to while doing it for months? That's its own kind of cruelty. You should tell her you called me, I said. I already did, he replied. She lost it. Of course she did. Not because he betrayed her, but because he disrupted her story. Her neat little version where I was the distant husband, and she was the woman who had simply moved on. I hung up without saying goodbye. That night, I checked into a cheap extended stay hotel under a different name. I didn't want anyone to find me. Not yet. I needed time. Space. I needed to figure out if I was just going to quietly disappear, or if I was going to let her know that I knew everything. But then something unexpected happened. The next evening, I heard a knock at my motel room door. And when I opened it, it wasn't Eleanor. It was Amy, her sister, and she looked terrified. Amy didn't knock like someone dropping by to talk. She knocked like she was on the edge of something urgent, uneven, almost panicked. 3 sharp taps, one pause, then another. I stared at the door for a moment, honestly frozen. Part of me thought it might be Eleanor. That maybe she'd figured out where I was staying and come to beg or scream or twist the story into something unrecognizable. But when I opened the door, there was Amy, wearing sweatpants, no makeup, rain in her hair, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. I hadn't seen her in months. Not since that weird Thanksgiving where Eleanor snapped at me for bringing the wrong wine and Amy caught my eye with this look like. She's been cruel lately, hasn't she? She didn't ask to come in. She just stepped past me and sat down at the edge of the bed, still holding her phone like a weapon. You need to see this, she said. Her voice was low, controlled. But whatever was behind her eyes was unraveling fast. She opened her messages and tapped on a video. I wasn't going to get involved, she whispered. I told myself it wasn't my business. But after what she told Mom last night, after the way she laughed about it, like it was some big inside joke, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The video was shaky, like it had been taken while hiding. It was a restaurant upscale. Dim lighting, white tablecloths, the kind of place Eleanor used to say we couldn't afford. She was sitting in a booth with Devin, her hand resting over his like it had belonged there forever. They weren't just talking. They were planning. I couldn't hear every word, but I caught enough. He's not going to put up a fight, Eleanor said, swirling her wine glass. He's always been passive. Guilt is his natural state. Devin leaned in. Are you sure he won't come for the house? She smirked. Marvin. He'll crumble. I'll cry once, and he'll just hand it over. Amy hit pause. There's more, she said. She opened a second clip, this one shorter, taken from outside what looked like a bank. Eleanor and Devin again. He was holding a manila envelope. She was pointing at something on a document. Then, clear as day, Eleanor said, once the accounts are split, I'll push him toward mediation. No lawyers. We bleed him slow. He won't even see it coming. I sat down without realizing it. My knees didn't work. My chest felt like it had caved in. I thought betrayal was a flicker, a moment you could identify, like catching someone in a lie. But this was systematic. Choreographed. Like I wasn't a person, just a target with a timeline. Amy reached into her coat and pulled out another envelope. She left this in Mom's office. I think it was supposed to be mailed next week. I opened it. Inside was a letter. Not to me. To a mediator. It outlined concerns about Marvin's mental fitness and included words like withdrawn, unstable, erratic. She was setting me up, preparing the narrative, and I was walking straight into it, like a fool with a birthday candle in my hand. I didn't speak for a long time. Amy just sat there, staring at the floor, until finally she said, "What are you going to do?" I laughed. Quietly. Bitterly. "I don't know," I said. "I think I'm done playing the good guy." But even then, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew I couldn't go back. Not to the house. Not to the version of me that thought love was enough. Not to the man she believed would crumble. I thanked Amy. She hugged me. We didn't say much after that. She left me with the videos, the letter, and something else I didn't expect, the contact for an attorney. I didn't sleep that night. I just kept watching the footage on repeat, until the sun came up and the motel light flickered off. And then, sometime around 6:30 a.m., my phone buzzed again. It was Eleanor. One message. "I need to see you. Now. It's urgent." I stared at her message for 5 straight minutes. "I need to see you. Now. It's urgent." It sat there on my lock screen like a threat wrapped in concern. After everything I'd heard, after the video and the manila envelope, and the way her voice dipped into manipulation when she thought I wasn't listening, part of me still paused. That's the worst thing about emotional damage. It doesn't come with a clean break. It lets you bleed out slow, confused by the ache and still somehow hoping they'll stop it. I didn't answer her. Not right away. I went to the tiny bathroom in my motel room, splashed cold water on my face, stared at the hollow version of me in the mirror, red-eyed, unshaven, with a face that looked like it had aged 5 years since the party. I kept hearing her words over and over. We bleed him slow. I had been nothing more than a project, an obstacle. And now, after all of that, she had the nerve to use the word urgent. I finally texted back. "Where?" The reply came instantly. "The cafe near 9th and Willow. Please. I just need 10 minutes. I didn't know her that. I knew that. But there was something in me. Maybe it was grief. Maybe it was a compulsion to look my enemy in the eye. That wanted to see her one more time. Not Eleanor the strategist. Not Eleanor the actress at my birthday party. Just the woman who used to fall asleep on my shoulder during documentaries and once cried when I surprised her with a picnic in the middle of a rainstorm. The cafe was mostly empty when I got there. She was already seated at the corner booth, wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy, hands folded like she was in confession. I stood by the door longer than necessary, making her wait, watching the way she kept glancing toward the entrance. When I finally approached, she stood, moved as if to hug me, then froze when I didn't reciprocate. "Marvin," she said, voice breathy, urgent, almost performative. "Thank you for coming." I slid into the booth but didn't speak. Just looked at her. Studied her. She looked polished, too polished. Hair blown out, makeup concealing whatever she thought I'd see underneath. But her eyes couldn't lie. They were twitchy, cornered. This wasn't guilt. This was fear. "I know you're upset," she began, "and I don't blame you. But you've got it all wrong. What Amy showed you was real." I cut in. My voice surprised even me, firm, steady, not the wreck I felt like inside. "I saw the video. I heard what you said. You were setting me up." She blinked, lips parting, then closing again. She adjusted the silver bracelet on her wrist like it was a nervous tick. "It wasn't supposed to go like this," she muttered. "Devin wasn't supposed. He said he'd never talk to you. He promised." "So it's true," I said. "All of it." She lowered her head. "It started off harmless. You were so distant. You never fought back, never challenged anything. It felt like you didn't want me anymore." I actually laughed. A dry, bitter sound that echoed in the quiet cafe. "So you made up a version of me that you could destroy guilt-free?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small envelope. "I came here to give you this," she said. "It's the revised property agreement. I'm not taking the house. I'm not touching your accounts. I told Devin it's over." I didn't touch the envelope. "You're just doing damage control," I said quietly. "You're not sorry. You're cornered. There's a difference." She exhaled, voice dropping lower. "They found out at work. Someone sent the video to HR. Devin's on leave. They're reviewing my conduct. Amy probably leaked it. I don't know what she told you, but I held up my hand. "You think I care about your job?" She was quiet for a long time. And then, softly, with that practiced look I used to mistake for sincerity, she said, "I never wanted to hurt you." I leaned forward just a little. "But you did." She looked down. For once, no response. No tears. No defense. Just silence. "I'm not playing your role anymore," I said, standing. "You can script whatever version of me you want for your friends or HR or your next Devin. But I'm done." As I walked out, I could feel her watching me, but she didn't call after me. She didn't beg. And that's when I knew for sure she wasn't sorry I was gone. She was sorry I saw behind the curtain. I got back into my car and drove. This time not out of fear, not in shame. I had somewhere to be. Because earlier that morning, before Eleanor's text ever came in, I'd already made another appointment with a lawyer Amy recommended. And when I arrived, he was waiting with something that would flip this entire game on its head. Something I never expected. Something Eleanor never thought I'd find. The attorney's office was on the third floor of an old building that smelled like leather, dust, and quiet secrets. His name was Simon Delbridge, a man with steel gray hair, square glasses, and a voice like he was used to delivering bad news without blinking. Amy had insisted I see him, even booked the appointment herself. I didn't argue. At that point, I was done trusting my own instincts. I'd picked the wrong person to love. The least I could do was let someone else steer me now. I sat across from Simon while he reviewed a thin stack of documents. He didn't offer small talk. Didn't ask about my day. Just flipped pages, adjusted his glasses, and finally said, "I believe you're not aware of this account." He slid a paper toward me. It was a bank statement, not from any institution I recognized, but the name on the account was mine. Or at least it was supposed to be. Marvin G. Hallie. Not Marvin. Marvin, with an E. A name I'd never once signed, never once typed. I stared at it. At the balance, which was almost $47,000, and then at the date the account was opened, August 19th. That date rang a bell. It was the same week Eleanor had insisted I let her handle some paperwork for our home insurance renewal because she claimed I always missed the fine print. Simon tapped the paper. "This account was opened using your social security number and what appears to be a forged signature. The funds have been trickling in from multiple sources over months. Bonuses. Transfers. Some things she moved from your joint savings in small amounts." It felt like falling into ice water. Because I remembered those amounts. I remembered the $380 here, the $590 there. Every time I asked, Eleanor had a story. The vet. Your prescription. I bought gifts for your niece's wedding. I believed her. Every single time. Simon slid another paper toward me. A notarized form, signed in my name. But the handwriting wasn't mine. "She's been slowly building a trail to make it look like you were moving funds in anticipation of separation. If this had gone to mediation, she would have used it to claim you were hiding money." I stared at the papers in front of me. They were proof of something I hadn't even imagined. This wasn't just emotional betrayal. It wasn't even opportunistic cruelty. It was a blueprint, a quiet, methodical plan to dismantle me from the inside out and call it legal. Can we reverse it? I asked. My voice sounded weak, like it belonged to someone else in the room. Simon nodded. If we move quickly, I'll file the injunction. But Marvin, he looked me dead in the eye. You need to understand. This wasn't just a flirtation. This was a campaign. And I'd wager this isn't the only account. I left the office with a folder clutched to my chest like it was radioactive. I didn't go back to the motel. I couldn't stand the fluorescent buzz of the light or the plastic mattress anymore. I needed air. I drove until I found an overlook, one of those scenic pull-offs with a picnic table and a faded map sign. I sat on the hood of my car and watched the sky turn orange, thinking about how long she had been preparing this. 12 years of marriage. Of inside jokes. Of whispered apologies after arguments. Of birthdays and anniversaries and quiet Tuesday nights. And somewhere along the way, she had switched tracks, from us to her. And I hadn't even seen the junction pass. But here's the thing. The more I looked at that folder, the less I felt like a victim. Something was shifting. Not anger. Not yet. But something new. Clarity, maybe. I opened my phone and finally did something I hadn't allowed myself to do before. I went through our shared cloud drive. The one she always said she never used. The one where I kept receipts and scanned copies of boring stuff. And buried deep in a subfolder named Recipes, beneath a file labeled Grandma's Lasagna.pdf, I found a zip file titled with a random string of letters and numbers. When I opened it, I froze. It was a screen recording, roughly 7 minutes long. She must have forgotten it auto-backed up. Or maybe she never thought I'd dig that deep. It was her, sitting at her work desk, talking to Devin on speaker, planning something involving after the divorce. Something that had nothing to do with moving on and everything to do with cashing out. And near the end of the recording, she said something that chilled me to my bones. Even if Marvin finds out, he'll never fight. He's not the type. He folds. That was the moment something broke in me. Because she was wrong. I wasn't going to fold. Not anymore. I used to think strength looked like yelling, throwing plates, slamming doors. But sitting alone in my car, watching that recording of my wife telling her lover I was a weak man who'd never fight, that I'd fold, I realized strength looks more like stillness. Like choosing not to scream, not to run, but to watch, to gather, to wait, and then to strike precisely where it hurts the story they've written about you. For days, I said nothing. I didn't call her. I didn't respond to Amy's messages asking for updates. I let Eleanor think I'd vanished. Or maybe that I was sitting somewhere licking my wounds, staring out a window like a broken character in a sad movie. I wasn't. I was meeting with Simon. I was collecting account histories. I was moving my personal items from our shared cloud to a new, private space. I was talking to an old college friend who worked in HR consulting. Quiet things. Things that wouldn't make noise until it was too late for her to react. The timing had to be right. I waited until Friday, end of the work week, when minds were tired, and Eleanor would let her guard down. I parked 2 blocks from our house, dressed in plain clothes, hat pulled low. Not to sneak. I wasn't ashamed, but because I didn't want her seeing me coming. I walked in through the side gate. Used my old key. She hadn't changed the locks yet. Probably still thought she could manipulate me into a civil conversation if I returned. But I didn't go to the kitchen or the bedroom. I went straight to the study. I knew she had one drawer she thought I never opened. It squeaked. She made fun of me for hating that noise. That drawer held an external hard drive, tucked beneath old receipts, and her passport. I took it, along with a leather-bound planner from the shelf marked 2022. I didn't even flip it open there. I just grabbed what I needed and left before she got home. I reviewed everything in my car. The drive was full of documents she never expected anyone else to see, not just financial plans, but messages between her and Devin, audio notes she'd recorded for herself, likely to organize her thoughts. One of them started like this. Note to self. Devin wants me to push Marvin toward a panic episode. Frame it as a mental break if he resists mediation. I stopped the recording. My jaw clenched so hard I thought I'd crack a molar. They were building an entire narrative to paint me as unstable and capable, so they could walk away with everything and wear clean faces doing it. But what she didn't count on was that I wasn't going to fight back the way she expected. No court drama. No angry scenes. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. That night, I sent her one email. Short. Surgical. Subject, asset disclosure and legal intent. Eleanor. I'm formally advising you that I am aware of the unauthorized accounts, false documentation under my name, and coordinated efforts between you and Mr. Hayes to frame my mental health as a legal strategy. Copies of all materials have been provided to my attorney. I will not be engaging in mediation. I will be proceeding with formal litigation. You may have your counsel contact Simon Delbridge directly. Marvin. I never received a reply, not even a read receipt. But the next morning, a black car pulled up outside the motel where I was still temporarily staying. I watched through the blinds. It wasn't Eleanor. It was Devin. Alone. He didn't knock. He just stood there outside the door for a full minute. Then he slipped a letter under the door and left. The envelope was thick. Inside was a typed, signed statement, notarized, confessing to his involvement in misleading financial documents, manipulation strategies suggested by Eleanor, and even the suggestion that she was looking into mental instability clauses to block my access to assets. At the bottom was a final line. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because she turned on me next. I sat on the bed for a long time, holding the pages like a fuse. That evening, I sent everything, the files, the audio, the notarized letter, to Amy. She deserved to know the full story. She replied within minutes. You don't need to say a word. I'll take it from here. And take it she did. Because 2 days later, I received a voicemail from Eleanor. I almost deleted it. Almost. But curiosity got the better of me. Her voice was shaking. Her words broken up. She said, You win. I don't even know what I'm apologizing for anymore. Everything? I guess that's all that's left. It was the most honest thing she'd ever said. But I wasn't looking for an apology anymore. I was looking forward. I didn't call her back. I didn't answer her message. I didn't respond when she emailed again the next day, asking if we could at least have one final conversation for closure. Because closure, I realized, isn't something you request. It's something you give yourself when you stop chasing explanations from people who only ever spoke to manipulate. The attorney moved quickly. With the evidence Devin provided and the digital trail Eleanor never thought I'd find, the court granted an emergency motion to freeze all shared assets and open a full investigation into financial misconduct. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to confront her in court or see her crumble. Just knowing the truth had spoken louder than her rehearsed story was enough. And when Simon called to confirm the judge's order had ruled in our favor, including control of the house, all untouched funds, and full separation with cause, I didn't celebrate. I just sat down, exhaled, and felt something inside me finally go quiet. But this story isn't about how I won. It's about how I started. 3 weeks after the ruling, I packed up what little I'd kept in the motel and moved into a small rented cottage on the edge of town. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't moving on in the movie montage kind of way. But it was peaceful. There were windows that let in real sunlight, a creaky porch, and a mailbox with my name on it, spelled correctly this time. I bought a coffee maker. A real one. Not the single-pod machine she insisted on. I started taking walks every morning before checking emails. I signed up for a local book club even though I'm terrible at finishing novels. I adopted a senior dog from the shelter. Named him Gerald. He snores louder than I do and eats socks. But for the first time in a long time, someone in the house was genuinely happy just to see me walk through the door. Amy and I still talk. Not about Eleanor, just life. She drops off banana bread sometimes. We don't bring up the past unless it helps us laugh at how strange people can be when they're pretending to be decent. And one morning, while walking Gerald past a park I hadn't visited in years, I ran into someone I used to work with. Her name's Claudia. She remembered my birthday without checking her phone. Said she always thought I deserved better, but didn't know how to say it back then. We grabbed coffee, then dinner, then another walk. We're not rushing anything. We both come with scratches and dents. But there's no lies. No secrets. Just two people slowly realizing that survival isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something that might just be better. Sometimes I think back to that night. The birthday party. The candle she lit for another man. The moment I walked out without making a sound. It could have ended there. For a while, I thought it had. But now I know that was the beginning. Because I didn't fold.